And you're from Los Angeles?
No, Michigan, New York, D.C., Nashville.
Where are you these days? Here?
Nashville.
You're in Nashville?
I've been in Nashville here for 13 years.
Wow.
Nobody knew I was here until recently, until the Saylor brothers brought me out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we blame them for a lot of things.
We do.
Yeah.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
In the studio with us today, from Michigan, Los Angeles, New York, all over the place. But now I find out she's a Nashville girl. We're going to blame Kyle and Kenny Saylors for that one, I guess. Sandra Gabriel, who is the co-founding partner and executive creative producer of the International Icons. She created and produced the live event of the American Icon Awards. She is a live event producer for TV, film, and music to benefit large events, most often for nonprofits or foundations. A visionary with 30-plus years experience in the entertainment business. So you've been in it not quite as long as me, and yet you still look young and refreshing and not dead. She brings a unique blend of talent, celebrity acquisition, management, negotiations with diplomacy. Boy, we don't hear that word too often in this business. To the live event experience with grace and fiscal accountability, managing budgets from 30-plus million to 58 million. You've also done some work on some shows that I want to talk with you about. One of the favorites that I always enjoyed watching, Late Night with David Letterman. That in itself could probably take up this whole episode. We'll just kind of read or digest that one. Sandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. What a pleasure.
One of the questions I always ask guests that are on the show is, how did you get started in this crazy business we call the entertainment industry?
Well, it was actually through a childhood best friend. He ended up going to New York, and because he went to New York and was a guitar player, he ended up auditioning for Elephant's Memory and started playing with Elephant's Memory, and then John Lennon. And I went to the Madison Square Garden show, and I really liked having that all-access pass.
Yeah.
I don't like being on stage. Stage was never my forte, but I really liked being behind the scenes. So I thought, well, gee, how can I be behind the scenes and be of benefit to others? So that's how I got in the business.
And make a living doing it.
Well, that's the other end. You do anything and everything you can possibly that's legal, moral, you know.
So how did you get started?
I started doing odd jobs. I started being an intern at Rogers Cowan. I started doing...
Which is what I think just about anybody in the business does, an internship at Rogers Cowan.
Somewhere. Yes, but, you know, I'm very truthful. So I made the mistake of telling the truth one day when I answered the phone, and I was promptly fired. You don't tell the truth. Oh, what a wake-up call, you know? So, and then I started doing odd jobs for Sam Merrill, who was doing a Playboy interview. And I transcribed his tape. That was long before we could do tapes, you know, by just a machine. You had to do it by hand. And I was really good at the typewriter. So typewriters, not computers. So I transcribed his tapes for him for the Playboy interview. And then he got an offer to do direct news for D.I.R broadcasting. And then he needed somebody to book talent. And he said, Sandra, I want you to come work with me. And I said, okay, sure. What does it mean? And he said, I want you to book talent. I said, well, who? And he said, well, let's just find people. I said, okay. So I just delved right in and started booking people.
That's so interesting that you say that.
Okay. Why?
What you just said, because that's what I told people, you know, when I first became a road manager or went to work for the record label, it was like, okay, you're going to do this. And I was like, great, what is that?
Okay, what do I do?
And you just kind of do it. Yeah.
You say, okay, all right.
You almost have to be fearless.
I would say I am very fearless.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it scares a lot of people because I still am, you know.
Booking talent for events is not an easy job on a good day.
No, or for anybody.
What was that journey like for you in the beginning?
Well, there's a lot of people that have the same name. I would say you have to make sure it's the right person.
Why do I feel like there's an oops here?
Well, you know, you learn.
Yeah.
You know, you learn from experience. You know, and I did. I learned very quickly. And you also learn that you have to pre-interview the guests for the producer until you become one. Now you know what you look for.
Yeah.
So I worked for Direct News. It was a 5-minute weekly, daily broadcast for Sam was the interviewer, but I did all the pre-interviewing for him. And then they brought on Robert Klein, and then they couldn't book it. And they said, Sandra, find us celebrities for the Robert Klein radio show.
Wow.
I said, sure. Okay. So I started booking that too.
Was it just a lot of cold calls you were making?
Of course,
Yeah.
but you become friends with people. You remember people's names. I do that to this day. I remember people's names. I say that's the most important thing to do. Even at a restaurant, remember their names.
Yeah.
They'll take good care of you if you remember their names.
I'm assuming that at some point you had a pretty big Rolodex file going.
I still do.
Yeah. Us in the analog world, old school, we used Rolodex cards back in those days.
I still have them in storage.
Yeah.
I have all my booking sheets from Letterman.
Let's talk about Letterman.
Okay.
Maybe a little early in the game because there's so much more we can talk about. How did that come about, going to work for Late Night with David Letterman?
Well, the transition between Robert Klein Radio and David Letterman was interesting for me because for Robert Klein on radio, I mean, I loved it. I loved radio because, I mean, radio was fun. I mean, you just have microphones and you could say and do anything. And Robert was amazing. He was incredible. I seemed to work most of my life with comedians. I don't know why that happened, but it did. And so D.I.R. Broadcasting decided to cancel the Robert Klein radio show, the Robert Klein Hour. And when they did, I went to Robert. Now, I'm just a kid. I'm a kid. And I said, Robert, I don't think your show is over yet. Why don't we do it? And I asked Bob and Peter, is it okay if we pick up the show and do it ourselves? And they said, okay, yeah, we're done. We're done with it. We don't want to work with Robert anymore. And so we did. We did it ourselves. And I'm just this kid, and I'm going, damn, I can't believe I'm producing Robert Klein radio show now by myself. You know, I booked the studio, I got the engineer, you know, took some of the crew with me that knew what they were doing, and we went from that. But we only lasted a year because we lost rock and roll stations to country. And when that happens, you lose your base, and so that's what happened. And at that time, when we lost that, David Letterman was just coming on late night. And David Letterman and Robert Klein share the same manager. So David Letterman loves rock and roll. So who better to choose for coming on to book celebrities and rock and rollers than me? So
were you in on the David Letterman show from the very beginning?
Yes.
What was that like? Because I'm assuming back then nobody really had an idea how big it was going to be.
Nobody knew who he was, and everyone thought we taped it at 12:30 at night. So,
yeah, which you didn't.
No, we taped at 5 o'clock, 5:30.
Just like Jay Leno did out on the West Coast.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
After David. Yeah. Oh, it was quite a challenge, to say the least. But the good news is across the hall from us was Live at 5. It was an NBC local station, and they always had celebrity guests on too. So we made nice with them. We were constantly usurping their guests.
Yeah.
And don't forget also Saturday Night Live was in the building. So we were finding out who was on their show. So we were constantly trying to get who was on other shows in the neighborhood so we could bring them on our show. And I remember once Peter O'Toole came on. He'd been on Live at 5, and he came over, and he's sitting there, and we just brought him from right across the hall, and he sat there. And
so you literally brought him from one studio into Late Night with David Letterman.
He says, "Oh, coming on," and he goes, he's sitting next to David. He goes, Who are you, sir? David Letterman. Oh, and what do you do? It was hysterical. He didn't know who he was. He had no idea.
But this was back in the early days.
Oh, no one knew who he was.
Yeah. So how difficult was it to get guests? Because I'm going to assume as the show found success, you probably found that job of booking talent just a little bit easier. How difficult was it in the beginning? It sounds like you were just literally grabbing people from wherever you could get them.
It was difficult all the time, simply because David is very specific in who he wants on the show. You know, he likes sports people, he likes authors, he likes music people. They're not exactly the best interviews. You know, he likes people who normally don't do talk shows. They're tough, you know, so the biggest gets were the ones that were pretty amazing, you know, to get. And it took a while to get them. But, you know, I mean, I was relentless.
At what point did you have kind of that aha moment and went, we're there, this is going to work?
I think when we did our first anniversary special, and then people wanted to do the anniversary special, and that wasn't so tough to book. You know, like Billy Joel wanted to do it, and a lot of people wanted to do it. That's like when people wanted to do the show. It's not like we had to browbeat them to come and do the show.
Right.
You know, or explain who David Letterman was, you know, because they didn't know. They didn't watch him during the daytime. They didn't know he had a daytime show for a few weeks. They didn't know.
Yeah. And of course, then you had Paul Schaefer in the band, which I'm sure added a certain spice to the mix.
It did, a little cachet.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. People wanted to play with Paul all the time. Oh, yeah.
I remember, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, somewhere around there, I was working with Michael Martin Murphy. Okay. And Paul Schaefer wanted Murph on the show to do Wildfire. And I don't know if you had something to do with that or not, but I remember that Murph did not like to travel by plane. And I think, if I remember correctly, Michael took the train all the way across the country from the West Coast to New York City. Did you ever have scheduling issues like that with other artists that just give me an idea of, you know, trying to get somebody to get on the show and then, wait a minute, I got to deal with this too?
Well, Aretha doesn't like to fly, or didn't like to fly when she was alive. She would never fly. But she didn't like trains either. So that provided great difficulty. But yeah, I mean, we had a relationship with the limo company simply because we had to know where our guests were. And we were live to tape. We started when we started, whether a guest was in the building or not. Yes,
wow.
We started on time. David was adamant about that.
So did you have those situations where,
oh, absolutely.
Where's the guest?
Oh, absolutely, we did. Yes, and I think the worst of it, but it turned out to be the best of it. When you're a comedian, you make it work. You make it work no matter what. When we sent a car up to Levon Helm of the band in Woodstock, not a big deal, not that far. You know, we sent a car up there to get him. You know, where's Levon? Where's Levon? Levon, did he get in the car? No, he didn't get in the car yet. He has to get in the car. It's getting time for him to come on the show.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't getting in the car. So that was a bit of a problem. So we kept moving his segment further and further down to the end of the show. So Gerald Mulligan, who at the time was the segment producer for that particular segment, came out as if he were Levon Helm. And David asked him the questions as if he were Levon Helm. It was actually funny.
Oh, my God. But did Levon finally show up?
No, he never showed up.
Never showed up. Never got in the car.
Nope, never got in the car.
Did that happen more often than not, or was that a rarity?
That was a rarity.
Yeah.
But, you know, we knew that was going to be part of our history because of the very first show, which was with Bill Murray. Bill Murray on the very first show with the Peacock Girls and all that stuff and the extravaganza that was. Bill Murray was missing in action. He'd been at the set all day. He was in and out all day. He was all around all day. But when showtime came, we couldn't find him. We sent everybody out to every one of the entrances. Where is Bill Murray? he was missing in action. And we were at all the entrances because Bill knows the building. I mean, he's on the 8th floor. He's at Saturday Night Live. So we went everywhere trying to find him. Now, David started the show. It was our very first show. Started the show. David had no idea his first guest was not in the building. You know, the Peacock girls went out. They are dancing. They're doing the whole thing for the very first show. Bill Murray is still not in the building.
Missing in action.
Missing in action. Very first show ever on Late Night with David Letterman. Finally, he came in one of the doors, and we just raced him upstairs. No makeup, nothing. Boom, right onto the set as he was being announced. And he came out there and he said, "You have no idea what just happened, do you?" That's what he said to David. "No, what are you talking about?" "Oh, never mind." You know, no idea.
On the show with us today here in Nashville, Tennessee, Sandra Gabriel.
This is Sharon Kendrew, President and CEO of High Road Incorporated, and you're listening to the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hey, this is Jack Sharkey, host of Between the Notes. Take a break from all the turmoil in the world and join us each week as we explore the magic, mystery, and beauty of music. Between the Notes, a podcast dedicated to everything music, available everywhere you get your podcasts.
As a musician, you have a dream, that vision of what success looks like for you. Though it's not only about the money, money is part of it. Whether you've been extremely successful or you're just striving to maintain a regular cash flow, you need a plan. Money Concepts can help you develop a customized plan to achieve the financial stability and success you want. For over 40 years, Money Concepts has been providing holistic financial planning services to individuals, families, and business owners. As an independent firm, Money Concepts and their associates are committed to always represent the best interest of the client. It's really about a committed, benevolent interest in them personally. This independence, coupled with that committed, benevolent interest, means they represent you, the client, not a product supplier. It's not about selling products, it's about helping you achieve success. To learn how this can benefit you, contact my buddy, John Adams, with Money Concepts at 737-867-9309. That's 737-867-9309. You can also email John at jadams@moneyconcepts.com.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, business side of music. Sandra Gabriel is sitting across the podcast table. You have led, from what I've read in your bio, a very interesting life within this industry. And there's so many things, and I don't want to skip over some of them, and I don't want to focus exclusively on the David Letterman show. Let's talk about a couple other things, because you actually worked on creating a daytime show, I think, that was going to have some different aspects, some different women's perspectives, and that kind of went sideways. Is that something you want to talk about?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll talk about anything.
Well, let's go down that road then.
Nothing.
Let's see who we can piss off.
Oh, I don't mind pissing off anybody. After Letterman, I flew out to L.A. to sell some of my shows. Then I went back to New York, and I started producing for Joan Rivers, which was hysterical.
Now, was that her talk show too?
Yeah, that was her talk show. Yeah, I seem to be a pro at producing talk shows. It was an hour, and each producer got to produce their own hour, whatever that hour was. And it was wonderful until she decided to go shopping. I do not produce shopping shows. I don't like shopping. Last thing I'm going to do is produce a shopping show. To me, it has no redeeming values whatsoever. So she stopped her show, and I said, okay, what show do I want to work on? I said, I want to work on a show that I want to work on. And there was nothing out there that I wanted to be on and work on. So I created one. And I knew that the ABC network at 11 a.m. wanted a new kind of talk show. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to create one. 3 women, multi-generational, multi-ethnic, 3 different generations, Latin American, 20-something, African American, 30-something, Caucasian, 40-something. And I found my host. I wanted Andrea Martin to be my 40-something, but she's not going to do a pilot. You know, it was just a pilot situation. She wasn't available for me, but she would have been great. And I got Susan Manser and Unifaida Lampley as my African-American, and Lily Garcia as my Latin American. And I got them together. They taped it. I did 5 shows for ABC. I sold it to the ABC network. And I came in ahead of schedule and under budget, which nobody thought I could do. And I did. And I thought I'd be a hero. Who wouldn't be a hero? Because I brought it in ahead of schedule and under budget. Well, 2 years and 2 days after that, I kept saying, what's going on? What's going on? They took my show. They cut it down, made it a focus group. And I just read all the transcripts from my lawsuit against ABC and Barbara Walters. And the focus group's response was, great idea. Can't wait to see the show. Looks great. Looks interesting, different than anything else that's out there. And then, of course, I heard on the news 2 years later and 2 days after my contract was up, I have always wanted to do a show of women of different generations and ethnicities. The View. So, of course, I found a lawyer and we sued her.
By the way, that was a great Barbara Walters impersonation you just did. Yeah.
Well, I'd blamed her all these years until I read the transcripts for my lawsuit. And I realized it wasn't her. She had no idea about my show, Girlfriends. She didn't know. It was the female women executives at the time. Yeah. They knew because they bought my show. They were there when I created my show. They gave me $500,000 to produce my show. It was with them that I did it.
Yeah.
They knew I created it. They even used one of my hosts as one of the hosts for the Barbara Walters The View. So 3 women to 5 women, same concept, and you think you didn't steal it? It's like, what?
But obviously you didn't win that.
I didn't win it because I'm Sandra Furton Gabriel, and she's Barbara Walters and ABC.
Yeah.
And she was pissed at me for suing her. She showed up in her beautiful pink Chanel suit and her Jimmy Choo shoes and came over to me and said, I have never been deposed, and I will never be deposed again. She was very angry at me.
Did you ever make peace, you two?
I never saw her again in my life.
That was it.
No. Took some of my staff to work on The View.
Yeah.
No one had the balls to stand up for me, but they went to work for her show.
Yeah.
And my agent didn't stand up for me, but my agent would have made $10,000 a month, more than I would have if I'd gotten creative credit. Tell me how this industry doesn't suck. Excuse me, can I say that on
on a podcast we can say that.
Oh, good. Okay.
Well, and you've brought up a really valid point, because I think before the show started today, you and I don't know if we used the word survivor, but we're survivors of the business. Oh, yeah. And this is a very dog-eat-dog world. I think anybody that's listening that wants to get into the music business,
oh, God,
sometimes you might want to get your head examined before you do it.
Yes.
And I think you get into it, and this is how I relate it to you. I think you have to be passionate about what it is you want to do in this industry.
And you have to be moral, and you have to be honest, and there are no shortcuts. I'm sorry.
The shortcuts will get you in the end.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Yeah. You can't take shortcuts. I mean, I remember making all these side deals because they kept telling me, no, you can't fly in that band. We don't have any money. I said, okay, you don't have any money. All right, then I make a side deal. I went to ABC morning shows and I said, okay, I want to fly in Devo. Will you pay half of the cost to fly him in? And they said, yes. That's how I save my show money.
Yeah.
But do you think I ever got anything for it? No.
Yeah.
I got a band. I got a booking.
Yeah. So you left Letterman, you left Joan Rivers,
yes.
the female TV show that shall remain nameless. Didn't work out.
No.
What was your next step after that?
Well, then I worked for Rolanda Watts. She had a daytime talk show, which was different and good. I mean, I was able to produce my own shows. I brought up ideas and she would approve them or not approve them. And I liked it because I was able to do passionate, life-changing shows. Like this show could change your life. We did a show on African-American women getting breast cancer, treatments and getting mammograms. They weren't doing that in 1998. They weren't. And I remember fighting the King brothers about doing it. Oh, nobody's interested in that. We won't get good ratings. I said, it's not about the ratings. It's about saving lives.
Right.
You know, people don't want to know about saving lives. They want to know about the ratings. It's got to make it salacious. No, well, if you save a life or two, and I remember Rolanda coming to me afterwards, she got letters from these young African-American girls saying, I went and got a mammogram, and thank God I did. I have breast cancer. And she saved lives. And then after that, I had also Carol Baldwin, and then I went from there to producing my first live event for her. We did the breast cancer, Carol Baldwin Breast Cancer Foundation for her in Long Island, and got all 4 of her brothers involved. So that started that.
Let's talk about the live event, because that is so different in many aspects from television. Mm-hmm. But they do follow parallel tracks on occasions.
They do.
How did you get started in that? Because, as I said, it's a different animal.
It was Carol Baldwin, you know, because she asked me, you know, if I wanted to do something with her. She wanted to start a breast cancer foundation. And I said, well, let's do a live event and bring it to people's attention. You know, you've got 4 famous brothers. Let's get them all together. There was never a photograph of all 4 of them. And so I said, let's do it in Long Island. Not exactly my favorite place to travel to, because I lived in New City, New York, and had 2 young kids. So it was like, oh, my God, you know, but we did. And it was great. And I said, now let's do live streaming. Now, this is in 1998. This is long before anybody did any of that stuff. Right. My feeling has always been, and I remember even the ABC executives way back when said, you're just too passionate, Sandra. And now that's all they say about people. Be passionate.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's a nice problem to have.
Well, it is, and I will never change that.
Yeah.
So that's okay. But yes, you have to be passionate about what you do. And
so the live show.
Yes.
You started doing that for one organization, I think?
That was first for the Carol M. Baldwin Breast Cancer Research Foundation.
And then that started to snowball, I take it.
It did, because it raised money and awareness for her organization. That's what started it.
Yeah.
You know, and then this fellow in L.A. heard about it. He wanted to get the Baldwins involved, and then he got me involved in producing Liza Minnelli's event and then the RAD event in L.A., and so I started doing those events in L.A. And then I did a very big event with President Clinton and President Ford, and that's when Josh Groban came out. Nobody had ever heard of him before. It was incredible. It was a great show. Ray Charles performed, and President Clinton got up and played sax, you know, with B.B. King. It was amazing. It was awesome. On time, on schedule. And I remember, what's his name from American Idol? He's an NBC announcer.
Not Ryan Seacrest.
No, the other one.
I knew you would ask me so.
Oh, gosh. Anyways, he just turned to me and he said, why are you so calm? I said, well, what other choices do I have? You know, You just have to be calm, you know. Just things are what they are. And it's fun. It's fun, but it's a lot to coordinate, especially when you have Secret Service and then you have NSYNC and you had Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake at the time that were dating. So you have a lot of security, a lot to coordinate. And then people eating dinner. Hello. You know.
Yeah, the clinking of glasses and the clanking of silverware.
I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah.
I think eat beforehand and don't have an open bar.
Yeah. Yeah, especially the open bar.
Yeah, I think those days are over, you know, which is good.
In the studio with us here in Nashville, Tennessee, Sandra Gabriel.
This is Claire Ratliff with Laughing Penguin Publicity, and you're listening to the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
When you have a Korg synth at your fingertips, the possibilities are endless. Be it digital, analog modeling, altered FM, wave sequencing, or the multi-engine synth, Korg gives you easy access to a variety of features to help you get the perfect sounds quickly. Whether you're a professional musician or just starting out, Korg truly has a synthesizer to help you express yourself. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products to create new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives, whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhance Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at music's benefits through the lens of science and medicine, entertainment, and business. You can find me and Enhance Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here, Nashville, Tennessee, business side of music. Sandra Furton Gabriel is sitting across the podcast table. You have worked, as we talked about a little bit, with quite a few celebrities, including presidents, dignitaries, Hollywood stars. You know, it's easy to bring up David Letterman or Joan Rivers' name. Is there one or two particular celebrities that really stood out? I could ask you about Don Johnson, or I could ask you about Meadowlark Lemon, I guess. There's so many of these names that pop up. Bill Maher. But is there one or two that you just went, this is a true pleasure to work with?
Yes, Tom Selleck.
Tom Selleck.
Yeah, and the reason, because Tom Selleck came to play, and he didn't come with an entourage, and he didn't come with an attitude. And to me, that's always important. You know, they're a genuine human being and generous in all manners. He came and he did a stupid human trick. I mean, who does that?
What was this on?
Letterman.
Yeah.
Letterman, he came several times. He was a great fan of Letterman. And, you know, he always did stupid pet tricks. So he said, I have a stupid human trick. I want to do it on your show. Okay. Yeah, that's the spirit, you know? You want to know what it was?
What was it? Yeah, I definitely want to know what it was. Please, the suspense is killing me.
He dunked his head in a tub of apples with water. And he got it. Who does that?
Yeah, who does that?
Well,
Tom Selleck does, obviously.
He does. No entourage, no groups of people. I mean, it was fantastic. Good for him, you know?
What are you up to these days now? You're working on some new things.
I am, and I'm so excited about it. I really am. I'm excited about life, you know, period. But movies.
You're working on that.
Yeah. All In is my first movie that I was able to get funded. And it's a true life story about Chase Blackburn. So it's a family, faith, and football.
Let's talk about Chase Blackburn, because a lot of people may not know that name. I'm one of those.
You don't know who Chase Blackburn is?
I'm going to be honest with you, I
don't.
Oh,
my goodness. Football, well, I don't know what his position was, but he worked with the Giants, and he was playing the Super Bowl. And this was after a lot of trials and tribulations that he had personally in the game. He'd been fired, and then he got himself rehired, and it's a real human story about faith and just staying in the game and working hard to get back in. And that takes a lot of faith and a lot of practice. And his wife was very supportive. I mean, you have to have a supportive team. You have to have people around you who say, you can do it. You can do it. Just apply yourself, you know. Your time's not up yet. You can do it. Or you're never too old. I mean, look at Tom Brady, for God's sake. How many times has he kept coming back? Anyways, he was playing against the Patriots, Tom Brady. And it was the end of the fourth quarter, this Super Bowl with the Giants and the Patriots. And he caught the ball. He's not supposed to catch the ball, but he did. And it was a miraculous catch. And because of him, they won the Super Bowl. So it's an incredible story, real life story of faith and hope and hard work and just staying the course, which is what we all need right now in this time. It means a lot to me.
Yeah. And this is a new project you're working on. Have you started filming yet?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
Not we just signed the deal with the funders, and I brought the funders to the game. So I'll be a co-executive producer of the movie, which makes me very happy.
Yeah.
To bring one of the people to bring this movie. Steve Race is the producer director. And his group, amazing group of people. And I don't know if you watched the video. of the promo video?
I have not
for that?
yet, no.
Oh my God, it's so compelling. He's got top A people who were attached to this. I mean, it should have been made before COVID, but it didn't. I guess it was waiting for me. I don't know.
Well,
or somebody else like me.
COVID had a lot to do with shaking up our business.
It did.
Yeah.
And shakeups are good.
Yeah,
They're not bad.
I think so.
Yeah. And so because of our fabulous Sailor Brothers, I did a speak like you did, and I met two amazing people at it afterwards. Dreyfus Andrews and Christine Goldberg. And Dreyfus has written a screenplay called Closure. It also is based on a true life story. And that's a film that Gabriel Productions, my company that I've just resurrected after so many years. My husband and I had that company. And it's going to be our first film. And again, it's about hope. It's about faith. It's about hard work. And it's about also dealing through and working beyond domestic abuse. And the one thing we will do in all of the projects we work on, because our tagline is always creating hope-filled entertainment. So whether it's films or TV or music or books or podcasts or whatever it is, everything that relates to anything that has to do or be of benefit in whatever way, we will be giving 20% of our net profits to that organization that can benefit from it. So in this case, for Closure, it will be domestic abuse places all around the world when this movie gets made. And it will be made this year. Yeah. And Tony Grant, who's the lead singer of The Temptations, heard about the film and called Dreyfus and said, I want in this movie. Write a part for me. I want in this movie. And it's pretty amazing, you know. So the word is out about this movie Closure.
I'm looking through your photo album here that you just handed me, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm looking at, I should have looked at this sooner.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Greg Allman, Kenny Loggins, of course, Ringo Starr.
I know.
Who I had the opportunity to work with.
I know.
Back in '89. Robert Klein, you said that he was, well, I guess with most comedians, they pretty much get on a vamp and don't know how to stop.
Not at all. I said, Robert, please don't go beyond 5 or 10 minutes. Oh, 30 minutes later, he's still doing his monologue.
Yeah.
How do I edit that? I'm just a kid. How do I edit a monologue for Robert Klein, the famous Robert Klein, the comedian?
Well, how do you do that? Because now you have guests that are going to be on the show.
I have to edit it all.
Yeah.
And I have to make sense of it. Thank God I have a great heart.
And because it's radio instead of podcasts, you had time restrictions.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, lots of them. I remember William Shatner came. I don't know why I don't have a picture of him. William Shatner came into the studio because it was RCA Studios and Budweiser was our sponsor at the time. And Robert Shatner said, where are the cameras? It was so funny. I said, it's radio, so we don't have cameras.
Your first guest on the Robert Klein show was...
That Robert and I did ourselves.
Yeah.
Was Art Garfunkel and Stevie Nicks. How was that for a lineup?
What a lineup, too.
Exactly.
Did you have them on together or individually?
Oh, no, individually.
Yeah.
They all had their own little segment. And I remember Art Garfunkel sent such a sweet note to Robert saying it was one of the best interviews he ever had.
Yeah.
It was so sweet, you know? It was just nice.
Of all of those guests on the show, and of course, looking at the book, I see one here with Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, delightful. We had so many amazing people. And of course, Robert had the classic jokes. I'm not wearing any pants. How would you know if I were? You know.
Because he's on radio.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just so much fun. I mean, we had a good time. I remember once on the loudspeaker, because when you're on radio, you're not on TV. And I said, and please, you know, ladies and gentlemen, because we had a live audience, you know, and we had free beer. Oh, what a combination.
In studio.
In studio.
That's not done.
Oh, well,
not
we
very
did it.
often.
Honey, I'm fearless and I break rules. You know, nobody was driving. It was New York City, you know.
When you do a show with the likes of Robin Williams or Julian Lennon or Stevie Winwood, you know, there's so many different personalities and dynamics. How do you deal with all that?
Oh, it's fascinating. Robin Williams is just, you know, he just he just does, he's Robin Williams. I mean, he just does his own thing. Now, the one person who was very interesting was the comedian that came on and, oh my God, I can't believe I just lost his name. He had that fight, the faux fight on the Letterman show that everyone talked about with the fighter. Oh my God, I can't believe it.
Latva, he was on Taxi.
Yes, but his real name.
Right, don't ask me that, but I remember that. I remember that episode.
Oh, these senior moments are just too much.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Anyways, he came up to the office, and Kathy Vassapoli and I, we were the two coordinators that started together. She's the one that married Paul Schaefer. And he came up to us and he said, would you do me a favor and could you sign my will? We said, what? You want us to do what? Well, could you just sign my will? So we had to sign his will. It's like...
What a strange request.
We had a lot of them.
Yeah.
We had quite a few strange requests, and like what you said in the beginning of Letterman, what was the difference between the beginning and towards the end? People started knowing more about us, so it became more difficult to say no to people, and bouncing people from the show when the show ran long. That was also tough.
Oh, I was going to say, because...
This one here, go back a second. Michael J. Fox and his parents. That's Michael J. Fox and his parents at Live at the Hard Rock Cafe show. That one back there. And I don't think... He said to me at the end, because it took me... We taped that show on a Sunday night live every Sunday night for 2 years. So Paul Schaefer was the host, and I produced it along with Frank Cody and the NBC radio network. And it was the Hard Rock on 57th Street in New York.
Right.
And I just can't believe we did it, besides doing Letterman Monday through Friday. It was like, what, was I nuts? Obviously. So Michael came, and I convinced him to come with his parents. I said, this is something your parents are going to want to be part of. And I just convinced, I said, I'm sending you a car. You can get whatever you want. They'll have such a great time, So I got him to come. And he said to me at the end, he said, because I made sure that they were okay and that they, got home safely and all that stuff. He said, does Paul have any idea how hard you worked? I said, no, no one does, Because they never do they?
No, they don't.
Did Ringo know how hard you worked for him?
No.
No. Isn't that a shame?
Well, it's part of the business.
No.
Is.
That's the part we have to change.
Well, yeah, but I don't know if we're going to see that in our lifetime.
Why not?
Yeah, maybe.
What? But you see, if we don't start changing it now, it won't change. And it starts with the young ones appreciating all the people who work for them and with them.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I agree. I think every producer, production assistant, intern, tour manager, production manager, they're all worth their weight in gold. But sometimes it's difficult to put a value on that. And because this business is this business, there's a lot of turnover too. There's a lot of attrition.
There is, but if you treat people well, and if you treat them right, and not just the people at the top make all the money. That's where it's not fair. You see, on my show, Girlfriends, my team, my independent production, I was giving them a share of my show. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
But why is it unheard of?
Well, because it's much like the record business that I worked in. It's hard to break old rules that have been in place for decades.
But we're breaking them. The kids are breaking them.
Well, I think because also the new modem of how we watch movies or listen to music, that dynamic is changing the playing field dramatically. I don't think the film studios or the record companies, I don't think they're doing business like they were even 10 years ago. I think so much of that is changing.
We have to not be afraid of change.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And sometimes that's difficult, especially for people like us who've been in it for more than a minute.
I love change. Change is exciting, isn't it?
It is exciting, yes.
It is.
And on that note,
okay,
we will say a hearty adieu.
Thank you, Bob. What a pleasure being with you.
Same here.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.